Hey guys, Trevor Hunter here with Dirt Bike Test. Today we're going to go over our long-term project YZ450FX test bike. Put around 30 to 40 hours on this thing so far, and with largely unchanged platform from 2021, we have well over 100 hours onto this generation 450FX. So we'll go over some of the basics of the long-term maintenance, the mods we've done, what we think of the mods, and what we plan to do here in the near future. Starting with the motor, we've left the motor completely stock for now. Last year, our 2021, we went over 75 hours. Valves were fine, crank, piston, all that was perfect. We just change the oil every 4 to 6 hours, use some Maxima, and clean air filter every chance we get, and the bike just keeps running. Starts right up, no problem. Never had it die on us, quit on us, or anything like that, so bike is pretty solid. Moving on to the suspension. The suspension on the Yamaha, like most of their bikes, is really good stock. But for us, we were looking for a little more comfort and performance out of the bike. The biggest change that helped a lot was putting stiffer fork springs in the bike. Stock, they come with 0.46 fork springs, which are pretty light for this bike and for our intended purposes. So we we started at 4.8, went to 4.9, and then eventually settled on the 5.0. The 4.8 fork springs had the most comfort, but lacked a little bit of that bottoming and performance that we're looking for. The 5.0s had the most performance and the bottoming resistance, but lacked a little bit of that comfort. And the 4.9s were kind of right in between, with the best of both worlds. But we ended up settling on the 5.0s just for, we're going pretty fast, have faster riders on here. We're throwing lights on here to go racing quite a bit. So we wanted that little bit more hold up for their faster stuff. And then on the rear, we stuck with the same 5.7 spring rate. We actually went to a closed tip rear spring instead of the open tip that comes stock. And that helped kind of settle down the rear end, especially on decel. Just kind of a little more flat, a little more balance, and just trying to help the overall handling of the bike. And aside from that, we did end up doing some revalve stuff. Just the stock valving is a little harsh initially with the stiffer fork springs in. So we smoothed that out, and then got a little more on the bottoming side as well. For the forks and the shock, we went a little stiffer overall, just to accommodate our faster riders and our fast conditions that we're primarily riding this bike in. Next up, we have this tall seat on here. This is actually the Guts Racing tall wing seat. So that's the wings on the sides of the seat. A lot of our riders, not all of them, but a lot of our riders like the added grip. You can grip the bike with your legs a lot easier, with hooking your legs and your knees under the wings and kind of taking some of that pressure off your arms. And then the tall seat kind of just helps a lot with the cockpit and the rider ergonomics. The stock seat's kind of dished out and low, and like the foot peg to seat height is pretty kind of crunched and small. Then the seat to the handlebar height is tall. So when you put that tall seat on there, it kind of alleviates everything and makes it where it kind of should be. Moving on to handlebars. We've kind of been going through some different handlebars. Right now we currently have Renthal 790 bend 7/8 handlebars on here. Switch between that and then the Carmichael Pro Taper Evo handlebars, just depending on what we're doing and what kind of riders we're looking to have on here. But both of those bends are pretty neutral for most of our guys, and they a lot better than the stock Yamaha bend. Next up, a bigger change as well is the gearing we went up with this thing. Stock is 1350, and we ended up settling on 1452. So it's a little taller than stock. With that taller, we kind of, instead of riding like third, fourth, fifth, we can drop down to second, use third, fourth, and fifth. The gap's a little bit bigger in the transmission, but the bike has plenty of power, and we're not one to really rev the bike out a whole lot. So you have that little extra gap. It's not a big deal for us. But the biggest reason for that is it just smoothed out the whole chassis and the power, especially on acceleration, like small chop and square edge and stuff. It kind of just settled the bike down a little bit to get a little more comfort and compliance out of the bike. And that 52, it kind of is a close enough ratio to where we can now run second gear instead of third. Whereas we went to like a 1450, 1451, you're kind of in between gears with second and third. So that 52 at rear with the 14 front works out pretty good for that gearing and that handling. For our racing and some of our longer rides, we've gone with the IMS, the dry brake tank, and adds an extra half gallon or so we can comfortably go 50, 60 miles on one tank of gas, whereas the stock tank is only 2.2 gallons. So it limits yourself a little bit. The IMS, it kind of hinders your riding, kind of like the ergonomics in the cockpit a little bit. But once we get used to it, it's really not that big of a deal. It just takes a little bit of time to adjust to, and then obviously you have to cut the seat to accommodate that. But overall, it's more beneficial for our racing and riding that we're doing. And then for our high speed, our desert and Grand Prix racing, we put a steering stabilizer on here. So right now we're on the GPR the V5 stabilizer with their top triple clamp. It only raises the handlebars like 2, maybe 3 millimeters, so very minimal. But it's nice and compact down below the handlebars. And that steering stabilizer helps a lot when you get in the fast chop and high speeds and stuff like that. Yeah, just a little less arm fatigue, rusty upper body, and a little safer on that end. And then lastly, we put some Dunlop tires and nitro mousses on here. Our go-to front tire is the MX53 for pretty much any condition. Unless we're riding in solid sand, we always tend to run the 53 front. It's very solid, predictable, works well in all areas. Stuff that with the nitro mousse. And then the rear, we switched up depending on where we're riding or racing. Right now we have an AT81 on here for doing a little desert racing. But we'll run the 33, the 53, the 81, or even the MX12 scoop tire, just depending on the terrain, the conditions, and what we have planned for this bike. Another mod we've done is the Fastway Evo EXT foot pegs. They have the little ankle savers extenders on the back of them. Something we've been trying out. We don't notice it in a bad way, which I think is the good thing about these pegs. Some of our riders were worried they'd notice it in a bad way, but for the most part, they go unnoticed unless we want to use them, and they're there for our support. So we're so far so good with the pegs. We're a fan of them, and we'll keep testing them and see how they last. We'll give a full product report later on. Yeah, other than that, the bike is, for the most part, it's pretty stock. You don't need a whole lot to make this bike competitive and easy to ride and fast. So with the mapping a little bit to get the power we want, and aside from that, we don't feel we need anything else out of this motor. Even the exhaust, we don't feel is all that necessary. Maybe for a spark arrestor, if that's something you need. But as far as power-wise, just a little bit of mapping play. That I'll show you the map that we have in here. That handles a lot of what we want out of this bike. And to power the lights that we have on here, we run a WR stator. Simple plug and play. It takes maybe five minutes to install. Just get the WR part number and order that up, and it plugs right into your 450FX. And you can power quite a bit of lights. Stock stator, it's the same as the motocross model, so it doesn't use a whole lot. It doesn't power a whole lot, but the WR is pretty capable. So just a quick and easy mod to power lights or run any accessories you want. It's fairly cheap, it's easy, it's reliable, and you know it works. All right, that's a wrap. We'll stay tuned to Dirt Bike Test and the social media channels, our YouTube or website. Stay tuned at all. We'll keep providing updates on this bike as well as any other tests we have going on, and we'll see you out in the trails.